So he went to work for the dealer in '63. Okay. And generators, alternators, magnetos, engines, PTOs, hydrostats, whatever. They would be splitting 1026 hydros, fixing them in the middle of town, putting them back together, and go test drive it down the alley and down the road, right there in the middle of Washington, Kansas. I'm sure the neighbors were happy with all the noise. So they've been doing this for many years, and then about 1987, he got word that someone he was had done a bunch of work for was going to declare bankruptcy, and he went and met with the guy, and he ended up getting about 7 acres right on the edge of town, out of city limits. So that was the reason that he decided to put up a building outside of the city, outside of, a couple blocks from their home. So he put up a 80 by 100 building in 1988, and actually bought the business from my my Aunt Kara and Uncle Lawrence Hers, and we've owned it since then, and we've grown it quite substantially business-wise since then. We now have about a dozen employees, and we receive hydrostats from all over North America. I get calls from Europe sometimes. A lot of it's email. The reason I get emails is because I don't speak French and Spanish very well, really hardly at all. So I use Google Translate to help guys in European countries or the Middle East or South America. But most of our business is in the States and Canada. So as far as the process, going through the hydrostat, it kind of starts with the phone call. We'll get a call, and it'll be like, I have, let's say, a 1066 hydro, and it is doing this or that, or it's weak, it's slipping. Well, then I will go through the process on, does it do it hot? Does it do it cold? Does the hydrostat, is it weak in reverse or just forward? These are all clues that I need to know to properly help that guy diagnose what he's got going on. Because a lot of times they'll take it to a shop and they will just say, hey, it's slipping, it just needs a hydrostat. Well, that's most of the time honestly not the case. Most of the time it's something little causing a big problem, but you have to know how to properly diagnose that. So about 10 years ago, I came up with just a basic kit of everything needed to do so. Gauges, 0 to 600 PSI gauge, a 0 to 10,000 PSI gauge. The 10,000 is used to check drive pressure. The 0 to 600 PSI is used to check charge and servo pressure. In the kit, it also comes with hoses, all the adapters to do all the models of hydro tractors. There's also some isolation caps that are crucial to helping pinpoint, is the problem external or internal to the hydrostat. So we started selling these kits, or if guys can round up their own stuff, or if they had access to a dealer that maybe had them from an IH service kit, and then they can get me some readings. We also made, about a decade ago, some videos that I really badly need to redo. The phone quality is much better now than it was in 2000, I guess, 10 when we did them. But that having the videos where people can go online, go on YouTube, Facebook, or our website, and actually see where to hook the gauges up and get the readings that we need, give me a call back, and let me know what the readings are, and then we can further, okay, well, that reading's good. How about this reading? Okay, go drive it with the gauge on and forward and reverse, what are your pressures, and then actually load the transmission. If you load the transmission with hot oil, see what that hydrostat does. Watch that charge pressure. That's really the key to any hydrostat is hot oil. Stress the transmission. A lot of times I just tell guys to use the brake. If the brakes don't work, and a lot of times guys don't even have brakes on these things because the hydrostat, it decelerates itself. Hook it up to an oak tree, go up a hill, anything to create a load on the transmission. But watch the charge pressure. If it hangs in there when you go to load it and it doesn't just drop to zero, that's when I'm like, okay, well, you don't need a hydrostat. I know you took it to this shop. They said you did. So let's further diagnose this. You have the kit. I would like you to isolate the system by putting these two caps on these two places here and go test, go rewatch your charge pressure and let me know what it does. Oh, they call me back and then it'll be like, that thing goes right up that hill now, it has all kinds of power. I go, congratulations, you really don't need a hydrostat. So they're like ecstatic, is a quick, easy fix. Whether it be something in the drive control valve, something in the foot and inch valve, could be an adjustment just in the linkage or in the shifter. There's just things that got to be just right, and you got to know somebody that can walk you through that because it's in no service manual whatsoever. So that's how I spend a lot of my day is just phone tech on helping diagnose what could be wrong. Let's say we do have one that the charge pressure drops to zero under load. Then it's hydro time. And the reason that is because the rotating groups have charge pressure going through it. And if it drops charge, it's actually leaving the rotating group and it's going into the case. That pressure is going in the case. And when it does that, you may hear, hydros do have a whine to them, and that's the nature of the beast. That's normal. But when you go to load it with hot oil and it happens to make a and it quits moving, that's usually hydro time. There's nothing you can really do to fix that. The designers that made these transmissions are really pure geniuses. The way they made it in that you can pull off a cover off this or here, and you can access high pressure leaves. You can access internal lines, check valves. So many things inside of there that can cause a problem. The shuttle valve, for pretty much anything, it's easy access if you know how to properly go through the steps and diagnose it. Let's say you do have one that is bad. There's some ways to check. First thing I ask the guy, have you checked the filters? Well, no. Okay. Well, I'd go back, check the filters. If you pull, the canister filter off on a large frame like a 1066 or the spin-off filter off of the small frame, if you see any metal in them, cut them open. A lot of times they've never changed them in 10 years. They've had the tractor, or they didn't know there was a filter there. I hear that all the time. Yep, there's a filter on the right side. It's under the battery box, and so that's something we have to educate. Maybe they just got their tractor, they didn't know, or just never got serviced in the decades they have it. So we check that. If they found brass or steel in the filters, you probably got a big problem. No need to do more diagnosis. If it's, there's all kinds of brass and steel in here. Yep, it's time. Ain't no fixing that. Also, the rear filter. The later series had a thermostatic bypass, like a late 186 or 3048. That thermostatic bypass a lot of times would stick and stay wide open, so it's not filtering oil. That's something a guy needs to check too. Also, on all large frames, that canister filter on the side. When I say large frame, I mean 826, 966, 1026, 1066, Hydro 100, 186, and 3048 Hydro. All of them had a canister filter on the right side that has a bypass in it about the size of a nickel. Them, a lot of times, would have the tendency to fall out. It was just staked in there from the factory. That's one of the reasons about 5 years ago I designed a spin-on filter. It was an anodized CNC block that just accepts a spin-on 10 micron filter. That way you're getting 100% 10 micron filtration at all times. And every time you change the filter, you're changing the bypass. That's been crucial in just keeping these things going, that clean oil. When we do a hydrostat on these tractors, our recipe for basically not having repeat failures is going through everything in that system that could cause a problem. So we not only do the hydrostat, we do the foot and inch valve, and that's what puts power to the rear wheels. You put full power to the rear wheels through that foot and inch valve. It's attached to the inch or clutching pedal. If that thing is not adjusted correctly or has a weak spring, worn poppet or seat, you will not build enough drive pressure, and then you'll lose horsepower. That's a lot of these out there are running like that, and just nobody knows. It's never been checked. So it's crucial to check that, or you're probably leaving horsepower on the table when you could have used it a little better for baling or whatever you're doing with it. We also, probably about 4 years ago, bought a $40,000 machine called a Hot Flush from Iowa. Yeah, it's about the size of a microwave. But after we put it on a couple coolers and we seen what it did, every cooler gets flushed now on these tractors. It's amazing. It heats up the oil, it pulsates it back and forth. It gets everything out. That way you're not contaminating a new hydrostat with debris from 50 years ago or something. So that's been crucial to our even more recent success. Something else that nobody really thinks about is the PTO. You know, the ass end or rear end of that tractor is your fluid reservoir for the entire thing. So the last 40, 50 years of debris actually end up in the bottom of that. So we have whoever's working on it, whether we're working on it or the customer or a shop, we have them drain all the drain plugs in the rear end and actually flush that out with diesel fuel, wipe it out with lint-free shop towels. And then we also, in our install kit, we have a magnet that we put on the center drain plug. That's just a little future insurance plan for the next 50 years. And the other thing that we need to check is the PTO. And the reason we need to check the PTO is because the PTO is encased in the same oil. And if the clutch plates are metal on metal, or the brakes, there's 3 brakes in a PTO. If the brakes are gone, that can also contaminate the system. So we need to check that. A few years ago, we had a customer bring a Hydro 70 from Wisconsin, and he brought all the components, and we actually popped the PTO out apart in front of him. We could tell it probably never had been gone through because it only had a 5-disc clutch pack in it, and we always upgrade the PTOs to a 7-disc heavy duty. But we went ahead and pulled the drum off too, and the brakes were completely gone down to aluminum, and the aluminum was eating into the drum about 1/16 of an inch, metal everywhere. So that was why his hydrostat failed, actually, was because the PTO had ate itself up, and that contamination went into the hydrostat. And he's like, well, I see why you had me bring this in to check it. I go, yeah, you would have had a repeat failure, and we never figured out the cause of the first failure. So that's big with anything. You know, why did it fail? How do we make it not fail again? So when we get these transmissions in, you know, we obviously take a bunch of pictures of it, make sure all the fittings are there. You know, sometimes the guys will have them marked with different color nye ties. So having them pictures for them, reinstalling it, It's helpful for them, that way they get hooked up right if they did not take a picture themselves, just so we know what all came with it and put it back together like it should have been. But we do a complete inspection of it, tear it down. We inspect also the housing. 8 out of 10 housings we actually machine with the boring bar. There is a sleeve in there for the servo that has a Teflon ring that has a tendency to wear, so we bore that out, and then we get a dial bore gauge and we make a new bushing on the lathe, and we actually press it with Loctite to fix that problem in there. Honestly, most of the rotating groups are going in the trash. We have all of our updated units. They get brand new pistons, because the factory pistons that Sunstrand used in them transmissions were a phenolic filled piston. And what a phenolic fill is, it's like a bakelite or almost like a plastic material. And after so many thousands of hours, that material would come out of the end of the piston and actually make like a coffee grinds in the system, like gravel almost, and just contaminate everything. So as soon as we see that that's what's in there, we throw them in the bucket, and we for 20 years now, probably been using a solid barrel design that does not do that. The other thing that you check on pistons are in play to make sure the head and the body, and we don't allow any more than 6/1000 of an inch. There's a minimum thickness also that we make sure is in spec after lapping. The cylinder blocks are just always loose. We want to make them tight, because that's one of the things that will show up when that hot oil is the loose cylinder blocks, because there's each one of the 9 holes in this pump and the motor have a brass sleeve that can wear. So we inspect that. We put all new thrust plates in it, bearing and valve plates. On the large frame hydrostats, we noticed a lot of warpage on the valve plate. So what we did to fix that problem, to alleviate that, was we actually put a much thicker valve plate in the large frame hydrostats to fix that problem. But in order to get the correct stack height in the hydrostat, we got to take some material out. So what we do is we put a thinner bearing plate in it, and but in order to do that, we have to make it stronger. So we put a brass face bearing plate with it's a bimetal plate. So it's a brass face on steel. It's thinner but stronger. And if I ever do this again, I'll actually bring some props in a video so you can have a better visualizing of what I'm talking about. Also, the input shaft. A lot of the large frames came with 11-2 shaft. We upgrade pretty much all of them to a 13 now. Starting with the 1066, 966, they started putting a 13-2 shaft in them. You can't tell by serial number. There is no rhyme or reason. Some of them got it, some didn't. But anyone that has 11 in it, we put like a 13 tooth out of a 100 or 186 or 3048. They all came with the 13 tooth. That is a shaft that we're having made because we use so many of them. And we just don't have problems with it. They're beefy enough. Especially the guys with the 1026 and the turbo. That shaft, that input shaft from the factory, is the weakest link in that drive line, and they like to snap off or twist. And with what we're doing, we put more power to the rear wheels, so they definitely do it even more. When we get it all back together, it's quite a process, I guess. There's, like I said, the inspection, the tear down. We get everything to a bare casting. And after we machine out with the boring bar, there's some filings of metal in there. Then we put it into a axe machine, which is a spray washer and a caustic acid. So that thing is completely down to bare cast iron. Then we can inspect for cracks. We go through all the holes with a tap, make sure they're all good, and fix any that aren't. Then it gets put back on an assembly stand. Then All the rotating groups in the lap room actually, they go through a series of checks, and lots of mic and caliper being used in the lap room. Everything is on our tables, and they got to be just right. When we go to reassemble it, that takes a few hours just in getting them all back there, and then a few more hours of getting all the lines and everything in there, and then we bolt all the covers back on. Then we take it to our test room, and that's one of the differences that we've had over the years that nobody else has, is we actually have a test stand to test these in. We ship these things all over, and I would not be able to sleep at night if I didn't know that thing worked before it got there. That would be a headache. I couldn't imagine. And some places do it. I don't know how they get it, but ours will work when it gets there. So what we have for our large frame is we have a 436 turbo cranked up, and we actually bolt the transmission up to it, and we have an M&W dyno behind it. That way we can properly load the transmission in forward and reverse both, and we will run that thing harder than you will ever run it to pass our test. That also gives us a chance to look for leaks, get all the pressures just right, inspect, and they're going to be higher than what your factory sheet says. We make them hot, and we make such a consistent product. We make them all the same. Once they pass the test in there, it gets drained, and then it gets painted, and it gets put on a pallet, and it gets to its destination. The small frame, how we test that one, when I say small frame, I'm talking 544, 656, 666, Hydro 70, Hydro 86, like Lee has out here. Also the 2544, 2656, 3414 backhoe, 3500, a lot of them industrials also. So what we have for that is like a 414 turbo. We actually have turn-in that small frame hydro input shafts. And we actually bolt the transmission to the rear end of a 656, and we load it with the brake. That's how we're able to build drive pressure to make sure in forward and reverse it's working like it should. And then obviously we set all the servo and charge pressure as well. For our combines, sprayers, skid steers, all that other things we do, we have another test stand. And we can actually simulate a working field condition. We have a 436 turbo that we pull all that stuff with, and we actually have a setup where we can hook up a combine pump, combine motor in unison. So we're actually simulating a working field condition that is connected to another dyno. And no one else in our industry does anything like that as far as testing their hydrostats. So we could start with questions now. All colors.
Still have the museum going?
My aunt still has it, 2 blocks away. Right before I left, I think we had transmissions come in from Maine. We had a 1066 hydro come in from Maine. 656 hydro complete tractor came in from Illinois for us to work on. Hydro 100 came from Idaho. Another Hydro 100 came from Nebraska. Also another Hydro 100 came from Manitoba. A 186 from Alberta showed up. I think everybody was dealing with the snow and the cold weather and couldn't get any work done besides pushing snow or too cold to work in the shop, and it warmed up and all of a sudden we just got trucks rolling in left and right. So we just had a tractor go back to Mississippi. Guy thought he needed a whole hydro. It needed some adjustments. He had to service it and fix a couple of leaks, and it went back. We actually had a 3488 front wheel assist tractor about a month ago that went back home. Once again, it did not need a full hydro rebuild. We did a couple adjustments, fixed a valve inside, ran the test, and it ain't going to work like one of our hydros, obviously, but it's working like it should from the factory. We get a lot of these tractors from Pennsylvania, New York. Speaking of New York, we had a guy from New York buy a Hydro 100 in western Kansas on the Colorado border, went and picked it up, brought it all the way back to New York State, got on the internet, and he's like, where do I get this hydro fixed at? Well, everybody's like, you need to bring that to Kansas. Well, I just bought it in Kansas. Well, at least we're a lot closer than western Kansas, but he brought it all the way back for us. I have another customer that brought us a 1026 hydro, and I always try to buy them when they come in, but nobody ever wants to sell them. He brought that from Pennsylvania, and he was so happy when we got it done. He went and found another one. He found a 1066, and he brought that one to us, and we did that one for him as well. And he has pressure washer business, so I decided I should probably buy a pressure washer from him. I needed one, and so each of his daughters got their own tractor now. Early in my career, I suppose, doing hydrostats, I had a guy in Kentucky call me on a 656 utility hydro. He said the story was he had this tractor at 7 shops around Kentucky over a 3-year period. It still has no reverse. He spent $4,000 having people diagnose it. And he got on the internet. He said, I guess everybody says bring it to you. I'm like, okay, well, what's it doing? It's just got no reverse. Well, okay, I got some tests I want you to run. Nope, them guys did all them tests. I'm just going to bring it to you. No, it won't take long. Nope, they did it already. Okay, guy, I'm not going to argue no more. He was there next day or 2 days later at 10 a.m. in the morning. He drove the tractor on. Remember that, because it would only go forward, no reverse. So I went and got a 9/16 wrench and 2 of these isolation caps that come in our test kit. And he's taking the chains off, and less than a minute, I got these caps on this thing. He's like, can you get something to pull it off? I go, I want you to try and drive it off. It ain't going to drive off. I haven't drove off in 3 years. Hasn't gone reverse in 3 years. His name was Bucky Ward. I still remember his name, even though I talked to thousands of people. The story's so funny. So real angrily, he finally listened to me after the 4th time, arguing with me about try it, see if it works. It ain't going to do nothing, blah, blah, blah. Well, he started it up, 282 diesel. He just wound that thing, angry with me because I wouldn't go get a tractor. So he wound it for sound, far as it would go, slammed it full forward reverse. That thing launched off his trailer. Launched off the trailer. It came from here to that corner, hitting my building. He's white as a ghost. He goes, what the hell did you do? I said, I did that little test I wanted you to do in Kentucky before you came here. Well, them guys said they did it all. I had it at 7 shops, and they charged me all this money. Well, you didn't do the test I asked you to. I just wanted you to do a quick test.